There's a strange kind of pain that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with tears. It doesn't come with a diagnosis. And most of the time, it doesn't even come with a reason. You wake up. You go through your day. Everything looks fine on paper. And yet something feels hollow underneath it all. If you've ever sat in a room full of people you love, or achieved something you worked years for, and still felt strangely disconnected from your own life, this is for you. Because what you're feeling isn't laziness, and it isn't broken wiring. It's something far more human than that. And once you understand why it happens, you'll never look at emptiness the same way again. Most people assume emptiness means something is missing. A relationship, a job, a purpose. So they chase more. More achievements, more relationships, more noise. And for a moment, it works. But then the feeling creeps back in, quieter than before, like it was just waiting behind a door you thought you'd closed. Have you noticed that pattern in your own life? The excitement of something new fading faster than it used to. That's not a coincidence. That's your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. Here's what nobody talks about. The human brain isn't designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you searching. Every time you accomplish something, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine, not as a reward for finishing, but as fuel to keep you moving toward the next thing. Dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of pursuit, which means the moment you get what you wanted, the system that made you want it in the first place quietly shuts off. That's why the promotion feels amazing for exactly 3 days. That's why the new relationship feels electric until it becomes familiar. That's why buying something you saved up for feels incredible in the store and strangely empty by the time you get home. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, our tendency to return to a baseline level of satisfaction no matter what happens to us. But that's only part of the story. Because hedonic adaptation explains why happiness fades. It doesn't explain why some people feel a persistent emptiness even when nothing bad is happening. That requires a different lens entirely, one that has less to do with chemistry and more to do with identity. Think about it this way. From a very young age, most of us are taught to build our sense of self around external things. Grades, achievements, approval, the way people react to us. Somewhere along the way, many people stop asking, "Who am I?" and start asking, "What do I need to become for people to want me around?" And when your identity is built entirely on the outside, on things that can be taken away, praised, or ignored, there's no stable ground underneath you. You're constantly performing a version of yourself, and performance, no matter how convincing, always leaves a small emotional residue. That residue is what a lot of people mistake for emptiness. It's not that nothing is there. It's that the version of you living your life isn't the version that actually feels real. But here's where it gets even stranger. Emptiness often shows up most intensely, not during hard times, but during quiet ones, late at night, Sunday afternoons, the 10 minutes after you finish a big project. Researchers who study attention and reward systems have found something fascinating about this. When your brain isn't chasing a goal, when there's no task pulling your focus outward, your default mode network activates, the part of the brain responsible for self-reflection, memory, and rumination. In other words, silence forces you to face yourself. And if the self you're facing has been built on borrowed approval instead of genuine understanding, that silence can feel unbearable. This is why so many people instinctively reach for their phones the second there's a gap in their day. It's not boredom. It's avoidance. Scrolling becomes a way to outrun the discomfort of simply being alone with your own mind. Now here's the twist most people never expect. Emptiness isn't always a malfunction. Sometimes it's information. Some psychologists believe that this hollow feeling is your psyche's way of telling you that you've been living according to someone else's blueprint for too long. Not your parents' expectations necessarily, though sometimes that's part of it, but a general script handed to you by culture itself. Work hard, get the job, get the relationship, get the house, and happiness will follow. Except happiness was never a destination. It was supposed to be a byproduct of meaning, connection, and authentic self-expression. When you skip straight to the outcome without the meaning attached to it, you get the shape of a fulfilling life without the feeling of one. It's like eating a beautifully decorated cake that has no flavor. It looks complete. It isn't. This is where attachment theory adds another layer. People who grew up in environments where love felt conditional, where affection had to be earned through achievement or good behavior, often carry that pattern into adulthood without realizing it. They learn early that being valued requires doing something impressive, so their nervous system quietly links self-worth to productivity. Rest starts to feel dangerous. Stillness starts to feel like falling behind. And ironically, the more successful these people become, the emptier they often feel, because success was never actually solving the real problem. The real problem was never external. It was the belief, formed years earlier, that they had to earn the right to simply exist as they are. Have you ever noticed how some people seem completely at peace with ordinary moments? A slow morning, a simple meal, a walk with no destination, while others feel a low-grade anxiety the second there's nothing to accomplish. That difference often traces back to how safe stillness felt in childhood. If stillness once meant being overlooked, criticized, or unseen, your brain learned to associate rest with risk. So, even now, decades later, your body might interpret a quiet Sunday afternoon as a subtle threat. And emptiness becomes the emotional static of an old alarm system that never got the memo that the danger passed. But let's go even deeper, because there's a psychological explanation that ties all of this together, and it comes from existential psychology. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived unimaginable suffering, observed that human beings don't primarily seek happiness. They seek meaning. And when meaning is absent, happiness becomes impossible to sustain no matter how many external boxes get checked. This is sometimes called the existential vacuum, that specific flavor of emptiness that shows up not because your life lacks things, but because it lacks direction rooted in something you actually value. You can have the job, the relationship, the apartment with the nice light in the mornings, and still feel like a stranger inside your own routine, because none of it was chosen from a place of genuine desire. It was chosen from a place of avoiding disappointment. Here's what's interesting. Once you see emptiness this way, as a signal rather than a flaw, everything shifts. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" the more useful question becomes, "What have I been running from? And what have I been running toward without ever asking why?" That single reframe changes the entire emotional experience. Emptiness stops being evidence that you're broken and starts being evidence that some part of you is still awake enough to notice the gap between the life you're living and the life that would actually feel like yours. Now here's something that surprises most people when they hear it for the first time. Emptiness and boredom are not the same thing, even though they often get confused. Boredom is a lack of stimulation. Emptiness is a lack of resonance. You can be entertained for hours, watching something, scrolling something, talking to someone, and still feel completely empty because stimulation was never the missing ingredient. Meaning was. This is why endless entertainment rarely fixes the feeling. It just postpones the moment you have to sit with it. So what actually helps? Not in a quick fix way, because anyone promising an instant cure for something this deep is lying to you, but in a real, sustainable way. Psychologists who study motivation and well-being often point to 3 ingredients that consistently correlate with a felt sense of aliveness. Autonomy, doing things you actually choose rather than things you feel obligated to do. Competence, engaging in something that lets you grow, even slowly. And relatedness, genuine connection where you don't have to perform to be accepted. Notice that none of these are about achievement in the traditional sense. None of them require external validation. They're internal experiences, built slowly, through small, honest choices rather than dramatic life overhauls. This is why grand gestures rarely fix emptiness. The sudden move to a new city, the impulsive relationship, the total life reinvention. Those things can feel meaningful for a while because novelty briefly reactivates the dopamine system. But without addressing the underlying disconnect between your actions and your actual values, the emptiness eventually resurfaces in the new setting too, wearing a slightly different outfit. Some psychologists refer to this as the arrival fallacy, the belief that once you arrive at some future state, you'll finally feel whole. And yet almost everyone who arrives at that imagined destination reports the same thing. The scenery changed, but the internal experience mostly didn't, which brings us to something quietly profound. Feeling empty at some point in life isn't a sign of failure. It might actually be one of the most honest emotional experiences a person can have, because it means some part of you refuses to be satisfied with a life running on autopilot. It's uncomfortable, yes, but discomfort is often the price of self-awareness. The people who never feel this way aren't necessarily happier. Sometimes they're simply better at staying distracted. If you're someone who has felt this hollow ache and quietly wondered what was wrong with you, consider a different possibility. Maybe nothing is wrong with you. Maybe something in you is finally asking to be heard. And once you start listening to that quiet signal instead of drowning it out, something else usually surfaces, something almost nobody talks about. The strange way we sabotage the very things we say we want the moment they start going well. That pattern, the fear hiding underneath success, is where the next part of this story begins.